The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
After 10 o'clock, welcome to the second hour of The Talking Point. I'm Kathy Motlatlana, and as always, we'll be together until midday. Yeah, a lot of South Africans very concerned about the minister and her bodyguards being robbed, held at gunpoint, being ransacked effectively, and rightfully so, because of what it says about the state of crime in our country, but also indirectly our criminal justice system, which happens to be the focus of our conversation for this hour. We're in conversation with Steve Ralekwa. He's the head of legal services in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. And Mr. Ralekwa, I can almost see you, sinking into your chair saying, Kathy, please don't expect me to say anything about this.
Oh, well, it depends on what context you want, and let me say good morning to you and to your listeners, and thank you for inviting us today.
South Africans seem to have lost an incredible amount of trust in the criminal justice system, and that's across the board, from just the visibility of policing, the extent to which we have crime under control, to what happens when somebody is arrested, the process that they have to go through in the courts, and how that's letting people down, and it's eroding again those levels of trust even further. The situation that we have right now, it's unsustainable. We cannot continue on the trajectory that we have been on.
Look, Kathy, I think, and I do not want to speak on behalf of the police service, because I think they would be best placed to speak for themselves as far as investigations of crime is concerned when that is reported to them. But of course, and maybe for the benefit of South Africans, it's a three-stage process, because there's a process of arrest, there's a process of court, then there's correctional services once the accused person has been found guilty and then gets imprisoned or gets any other form of sentence that a court would find suitable to impose, in terms of the guilt finding that they do on that person. But perhaps it's a matter of policy, and I don't want to really go into policy issues. There are people that are best placed in government to speak to policy issues. But I think the concerns of South Africans is well noted, and I'm hoping that the powers that be are taking, note of that, and something is being done to arrest the situation. But that's as far as I can take it. Yeah.
The reason we have you on the show today is to respond to an issue that was raised by one of our listeners, Sipho, out in Margate. And he called into the open line incredibly frustrated about a criminal record which he has. And he said, this record was getting in the way of him being able to access a job. He claims that he was only made aware of this criminal record in 2014 when he needed to start being back on the job market and trying to find a job. And that, of course, triggered, our phone lines just were going crazy because of so many other people that could relate to the experience. His story, however, was unique because he said that he wasn't even aware of the crime or that he had been convicted. So he's completely surprised by what was found in the system. Yes. For the benefit of our listeners that may have missed that conversation, and for you as well, I'm going to play that a call that we had with Sipho, and then I'll get you to respond. And before we get deeper into the issues of criminal records and expungements and what it is that South Africans need to do.
Okay, sure.
In 2014, I had just resigned from another company, one of the private companies, to work for the government. And when I applied 3 months down the line, when I got the job, a criminal record came saying I had 3 prison sentences. To cut it short, I was dismissed for gross dishonesty and misrepresentation. I was so surprised that I had a criminal record. I tried everything I could. I went to the court. I got a criminal record book because the case was about 17 years old. So they said they had archived. They won't have a document to prove that I didn't have criminal record and so on. I went to public protector, legal aid with all the documents I could have to prove that I've never been sentenced in the Republic of South Africa. But even today, Kathy, I can't find a job. I still have a criminal record that I have a 3-year prison sentence.
All right. Mr. Ralekwa, have you had the chance to look into this matter?
Kathy, we have. And in fact, I assigned a colleague to speak to SIPO just earlier this week, just after we received the clip. And we have spoken to SIPO, although he does say he was not aware, but in the conversation with us, he actually said that he is aware that he was arrested on a charge of robbery and possession of ammunition with 3 others. Mm-hmm. And then the 3 were found guilty. And then on the 1, there was a discharge. But now he's not clear as to who amongst the 4 got discharged. So what we said to him was that, look, to the extent that, you are now telling us that, because we made contact with our colleagues at the Criminal Record Center as well, we asked him to send us whatever documentation he has so that we can look into it and see how best we can assist him.
Would he not have gone to jail if he was convicted of these crimes?
Look, if he was convicted, he would have. That's why we're saying to him, and that's the question we asked of him, to say, but based on the information that you had given into the radio station, what exactly is at play here? But then for us to be able to understand, we would want you to please send us all those documents that you have in your possession. Because what would then happen is we will look into the documents and then see how best between us and the colleagues at the Criminal Record Center can be assisted. In fact, we spoke to them as well, and then they said that they will use the court book. But obviously we want to get exact dates when he was convicted or discharged of the crime.
So just going with what you have now,
yes,
because there is a conviction on record. There are people that seemingly would have served time for this crime.
Or still saving time. We don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so is there no way of checking if somebody has actually gone to prison in this country? Is there no system where you can put the details and this tells you that, yes, this is the conviction, this is where this person has served their sentence? Yeah,
but then you see, on the minimum information he has given us, we are not able to do that. That's why we said to him, give us whatever document you have so that we can then look at it, take it through to our colleagues at the Criminal Record Center.
So an ID number is not enough?
Well, it might not, because remember, I mean, in most cases, there may be a mistake here, a mistake there, but at least if maybe, let's say, he gives us a copy of his ID, he gives us whatever documents that he can give us, that would make us be able to go on and do further investigation. So at this point in time, we are waiting those documents, because I checked with the office on my way here to check, because yesterday afternoon I checked, he hasn't sent. This morning, I just called the colleague just as I was coming through here to check if he has, sent the documents through.
All right.
But the colleague tells me he hasn't.
Well,
but obviously, as soon as we receive his documents, we will then look into his matter and see how best we can assist him.
I'm going to give you a chance to continue. Sorry for interjecting there. I'm just rushing to get to this break. We'll continue the conversation with Mr. Ralekwa in a moment.
Sure.
Hashtag SAfm Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Steve Ralekwa is our guest. He's the head of legal services in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, and we're talking about the expungement of criminal records. So, Mr. Ralekwa, just so that I'm clear on this matter, do we have a centralized system in the country, or even if it's not centralized, right? Maybe you just have to, if somebody was convicted of a crime in the Eastern Cape, you have to go directly to that province. But are we able to see on a system the conviction that a person has, and also the time that they would have served in prison for that conviction, or whatever sentence that they were given in relation to their conviction?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
For example, one of the documents that you require when you apply for an expungement of your criminal record is a certificate from the police. You can obtain that from the Criminal Record Center in Pretoria, which is the central office. Or you can apply for it at a police station. They'll obviously then send the information through to Pretoria for them to issue your clearance certificate. Or sometimes you can apply for your SAP 69I, which is what we call an illicit activity report. Now, in that report, it will show the exact time or date when you were convicted, the type of conviction that you were convicted of, and the sentence that you got to serve. Because one of the things that we look at when we process applications for expungements is the date of conviction, the type of conviction, or rather the type of offense you were convicted of, and the time from which you were convicted to the time that you are applying. Because there's a qualifying criteria that we use. So, for example, if you were convicted and given a sentence of direct imprisonment, you then don't qualify for an expungement. But then there's a category of convictions which would allow you to qualify for an expungement, but it must be 10 years after conviction. It cannot be before 10 years.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it's before 10 years, then you don't qualify.
And that's for every crime.
Every crime, depending on what crime you were convicted of. Like I'm saying, there may be those of the crimes that you would commit, and then you get a particular sentence, and then that sentence would then not qualify you for an expungement. And if it doesn't, then the other available option for you is to apply for a presidential pardon.
Okay.
Then as a department, we also facilitate those applications for presidential pardons, but they ultimately end up, before the president for him to exercise his discretion in terms of the Constitution.
Let's talk about the initial criteria before we get to presidential pardons, because I think that's part of the advice that SIPO had also received at some point.
Yeah.
What crimes preclude one from being considered for the expungement of the criminal record? So is it according to the crime that you've been convicted, or is it according to the sentence that you've been given?
It's actually according to the sentence, not according to the crime.
Okay.
Because sometimes, let's say you commit a crime of assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, you may not necessarily get a prison term for that crime. You may, let's say, maybe get a suspended sentence, or you may get a fine, and so on and so forth. But then again, let's say you get a fine. The fine must be less than 20,000. If it's above 20,000, then you don't qualify. And then, of course, just maybe to conclude on that, the sentences that you receive that would qualify you for an expungement is if, in the olden days, you'd, get a sentence of corporal punishment. It's no more in the statute books, unfortunately, or fortunately. So, but there are still people that are sitting with that kind of punishment that dates back those many years. So those would qualify. People that have been sentenced, but the sentence was postponed, or that the person was cautioned and discharged, or imprisonment with the option to pay a fine instead of serving a term of imprisonment. Or if maybe, let's say you get a fine, the fine must be less than 20,000. And then, or imprisonment was suspended wholly, or you were sentenced to correctional supervision in terms of Section 276, or you were imprisoned in terms of that Section 276, and then, of course, periodical imprisonment. So those would be largely the sentences that would qualify you for an expungement. But the trigger is that within the 10 years that you are still awaiting for your criminal record to be expunged, you should not be convicted and sentenced to a period of imprisonment without the option of a fine Otherwise, you then get disqualified, because what then becomes applicable would be that conviction.
What is periodical imprisonment?
Periodical imprisonment would be, for example, let's say you are saying, look, I'm working. If I lose my job, I may not be able to get my job back by the time I complete my sentence. And again, it depends in the discretion of the court. So the court might then say, okay, fine, what we will do, we will then, you'll go to work during the week. On Friday, you go in, you go out again Monday, and so on.
What kind of crime do you need to have committed that would qualify you for that?
Well, very minor crimes, I would suppose. I mean, you cannot get periodical imprisonment for a murder, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a horrendous crime.
So yeah, but I'm just asking about the examples. I mean, you have records of these things. So on record, what are some of the cases?
For example, your violation of your domestic violence interdict, for example. Those would be the type of, sentence that you might, get to be sentenced to for that kind of crime. I mean, at the moment, I can really think of a violation of a domestic violence interdict.
Is it a tool that is used often by the courts, the periodical imprisonment?
Well, I wouldn't be able to say, not being very close to the courts per se, that the periodical imprisonment, how often such a sentence is imposed. But it is provided for in the law book.
Sure, but from the cases of expungement that you would be aware of, that are obviously that also would have some kind of processing in the department. Are you aware of that? Of people that have tried to expunge criminal records from periodical imprisonment?
No, there are.
Okay.
There are. Because remember, that's a qualifying criteria. That you at least have been sentenced to periodical imprisonment, then that would qualify you for an expungement.
Okay, all right. We learn something new every day, hey? It's 10:30, time for the latest news headlines. I see callers have already started lining up to be in conversation with Mr. Ralegwa. We'll continue the conversation shortly.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We are learning more about the expungement of criminal records and what it is that people need to know, particularly those who have criminal records and have been struggling with the system. Steve Ralegwa is the head of legal services in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Before I go to the questions from our listeners, Mr. Ralegwa, I just want one last thing for you to clarify.
Yes.
When it comes to then presidential pardons, because you've detailed the threshold that is applied when one can, that allows one to actually apply for expungement. Yeah. So that means that anything above what you have told us is now, does it head directly to presidential pardons? Is that the only other recourse that's available?
Yes, unfortunately, that's the only other recourse that's available because, let's say, for example, I mentioned earlier that if you are fined, but the fine is above 20,000, then you don't qualify for an expungement. Then you then have to utilize the other option to have your criminal record expunged, and that is, in fact, pardoned. That is in terms of a presidential pardon. So as a department, we also facilitate those presidential pardons.
Often, of course, when we deal with presidential pardons, it's the high-profile cases that, journalists like myself will be reporting on. We'll go on and on about those. But just generally, how many presidential pardons are being processed annually? How easily given out are those? Maybe not easily given out, but just what is the prevalence of presidential pardons, where we're not talking about the high-profile cases?
Look, you're quite correct. It's not only about high-profile cases that, the president would pardon, but ordinary people, some that had been sentenced to direct imprisonment, obviously you don't qualify for an expungement. So you apply for a presidential pardon, and then it comes to us. We facilitate the whole process. So it obviously would then go through, the internal processes. starts with the compilers of the memo. It comes to me. It goes to the next level person. It goes to the DG.
Well,
and so on.
what is the criteria that one has to fulfill? So I'm assuming that as you are considering the applications,
Yes.
then you're deciding, you qualify. No, you don't qualify. Okay, bring this one to the top. Yeah, this one, let's just keep it at the bottom until the next round.
No, it's not necessarily keeping it at the bottom until the next round. But in short, applications for pardon, we look at various factors. Inter alia would consider the age of the offender at the time he committed the offense. The younger, the more motivation for a pardon. Whether it's a reasonable period has lapsed. Obviously, we use the yardstick of expungements, which is 10 years. And then we also consider the circumstances surrounding the commission of the offense, whether the offender is less or more blameworthy. We look at the nature and seriousness of the offense. The sentence imposed is a determinant factor and not the name of the offense per se. Like I had said earlier, to say it's not about the offense, but it's about, the sentence.
Which are the cases that where one could well feel, okay, I can't apply for expungement, so I'm going for presidential pardons, but what is absolutely excluded from presidential pardons?
Look, I don't want to say something or a particular application is excluded because it's not our decision to make. It's the president's decision to make.
So you're saying that all inmates or all people, because they might not necessarily still be inmates, but everybody that has a criminal record that is applying for a presidential pardon, that application ends up on the president's desk.
Yes, because in terms of the Constitution, that decision lies solely with the president. For example, let's say you commit fraud and then you get imprisonment as a sentence. You serve your time, your 10-year period lapses, you apply. Then let's say we look at it, or maybe it's a crime against women and children. Then we say, well, it's not in the interest of justice that this person be pardoned. That's the recommendation that we make. But the president, when considering the pardon, is not sort of held on to our recommendation. That's a recommendation that we make. But it's up to the president to say, well, the Minister of Justice has recommended that I not pardon this person. But I, as the president, exercising the powers vested in me in terms of the Constitution, am deciding to pardon this person.
Okay.
So it's a presidential prerogative.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me go to Mpumalanga. Isabel, good morning.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, Isabel.
Hi. What I want to ask, I don't know if it's really in line with this, but it's something related to that. I want to find out about the diversion. That how does the diversion work? Like, for instance, if you have a drink and drive case, maybe you bump into a property but nobody's injured. What are the chances of you getting the diversion instead of being prosecuted? That's what I want to understand.
Look, I can't really say what are the chances, because that depends on the negotiations between the prosecuting authority and your legal representative. So I cannot really give an answer to that and say these are the chances of getting a diversion, because that's an area that is outside of my purview.
So Isabel, do you want to know what it is that you would need to do to file for diversion? All right, it looks like we've lost Isabel. She's gone. Hey. All right. So sorry about that, Isabel, but I hope that the answer has helped somewhat. We'll take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls after this.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. Steve Ralekwa, Head of Legal Services in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, is our guest for this morning, and I've already started taking calls from you as our listeners on this matter. Isabel in Mpumalanga, sorry, we lost you a bit earlier before we went to the break, but I just wanted to check with you. Do you want to know how to apply for a diversion in terms of, a criminal matter, like you're saying, drunken driving?
Yes, I would like to know what is it that we have to do.
Okay, to apply for diversion. Okay, stay on the line, Isabel.
Okay, Isabel.
Okay.
I think what you may need to do is to. I don't know if you are legally represented. If you are, then maybe your attorney can then approach the prosecutor and apply for a diversion, and then obviously it will depend on what the prosecutors are going to be saying in terms of that. But like I said earlier, that's a process that is unfortunately outside of my purview, and I wouldn't really know what exactly would be required for a diversion to be accepted by the prosecutors. But it's a matter that can be dealt with by the prosecutors.
All right, Isabel, I hope that gives you a bit of clarity. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All the best, Isabel, out in Mpumalanga. All right. So I'm going to ask that our listeners, please, let's try and keep our experiences, what we want to ask about, precise, but also as short as possible, because we've got a long list of calls. I've got lots of messages that have come in as well. Anonymous, you are out in Durban. Good morning. You have a criminal record. What do you want to find out from Mr. Ralekwa?
Kunjana Sisketi.
Well, thank you.
All right. Sisketi, I was convicted for fraud. That was back 2004. So now, actually, 2006. So I went to ask for my criminal record to get expunged, but they say I couldn't get that distinct request being processed. I have to do appeal. Secondly, in the Eastern Cape, we had an agreement with SAP and the traffic officials. I was arrested, but I didn't go. I didn't see the magistrates. They came to me. They said, "No, you are free to go." They took some fingerprints. But now, when I wanted to apply for the PDP, that case it comes out and they're saying I'm awaiting trial. How come it's as possible? What I have to do so that I get all this?
And what was your sentencing for the fraud conviction, Anonymous?
I was sentenced to pay a fine of 5,000 or 12 months imprisonment, but I only stayed about 6 months, and then they released me on parole, ma'am. Yes.
All right. Mr. Ralekwa?
Anonymous, just so that I find out, on the fraud matter, you say you served time, but then there's also a fine. So you served time instead of paying a fine. Is that what you are saying?
Anonymous? All right, Anonymous is gone. Yeah, you can respond.
Yeah, look,
briefly.
because from what he's saying, he says he was released on parole. So, and then he's talking about a 5,000 rand fine for the fraud. So it could either be one of two things. The fact that he was released on parole means he served time, and therefore that's why I wanted to find out whether maybe at the time he did not have the 5,000. That's why he served time, or whether he was sentenced to direct imprisonment, in which case he may not then qualify for an expungement but for a presidential pardon. And then on the awaiting trial appearance on his record, it would then mean, because if he says he was then let go, it would mean that the police might not have updated their case system. That is the criminal, the case system, so that awaiting trial is removed. Because now, if he was then let go without a fine, without appearing before court, then they ought to have then updated the case system. So what he can do is to go back to the police station at which he was arrested for this. so that he can then, alert them to the fact that, look, I applied for a clearance certificate. It still says awaiting trial. So please update, the case system so that it removes that awaiting trial entry on the system.
All right, Anonymous, I hope that you've gotten good advice there. Emmanuel, you're out in Kimberley. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Emmanuel. You also have a criminal record. What is it for, and what is your question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, man. I have a criminal record. On my papers, I send you even on WhatsApp. On my paper, they've written reckless or negligence driving. I was working for a company. They sent me to go and deliver package. It was a courier company. So I was involved in an accident, but no one passed away. I was driving alone. The car just rolled. I was driving on a gravel ground. Now, I've been applying since it's been now 10 years. I haven't got the jobs because every time when I'm applying for a job, this thing is appearing on my name. I didn't go to jail. I only went to court. Then at court, they fined me 400. I paid that 400 immediately. Then from there, they said, no, this thing is going to stay on my name for 10 years. Now it's been 10 years, and it's 12 years now this year. I haven't got my name cleared.
Okay, Emmanuel, did you apply for an expungement?
Yes, I did apply.
And when was that?
I applied last year and last of last year. This year when I go, okay.
And then where did you apply for it? Did you send it through to us, or what had happened when you applied?
No, I went there by the court at the justice system. I filled up some forms, then they took me fingerprint, then they said they'll send it through. But now it's been 2 years already. I haven't got no response.
Look, maybe we might have to get your contact details and your ID number offline so that we can then check what's happening. And if for any reason we did not receive your application, then would want to then, ask you to please reapply so that we can then deal with your application. Because from what you are saying, you were fined 400 rands, which you had paid, and it's now 12 years, which then means you will qualify for an expungement.
Yes,
All right. All right, Emmanuel, all the best, eh?
Thank you very much.
All right. Ntabi saying our producer will take your details down and we'll give those to the officials. Rich, you're in Durban. Good morning.
Good morning, Katie. I'm not sure. Are they?
Yes, Rich?
Okay. I'm not sure because I don't have a criminal record. Maybe I must use other time. Well, I hope I don't. Mine was a traffic. Mine was a traffic incident where the traffic officer claimed that I did not stop at a stop street, and I disputed that. But because he was aggressive, I didn't want to argue with him. But what then happened was that I just listened to him, and he told me I can get a discount if I pay within a certain time. And then I said to him, I'm going to go to court to dispute. At that time, I didn't realize that he had completed that form that made you end up with a criminal record. So my point there is, I understand there's an administrative one where if you just pay, nothing happens. And then there's a criminal one where if you pay, you end up with a criminal record unaware. So the reason for my call was maybe the guest also can expand on it. But there are people who end up having criminal records not being aware because the traffic officer.
So Rich, is that what happened to you? That you ended up with a criminal record, but you weren't aware of it?
No, I did not, because I opted to go to court. He gave me a date on the spot. I waited for the date. I went to court. And before I went to court, I went to ask for the allegation at the traffic office. The traffic office, they tried to call him. He wouldn't answer. They said I must come back. They tried to call him. He never. And then they said, okay, we're going to have to go argue in court. I went to court. He didn't show up. So the magistrate said it's, what do they call it when they throw it out of court?
Yeah. They threw
off the record,
they threw it. They took it off the court roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get Mr. Ralikwa to respond. Rich, you can stay on the line in case there's anything else he wants to find out from you.
Okay, no, as I understand, Rich, the matter was thrown out of court. So, yes, he does not have a criminal record. But to answer his question directly, where you get a criminal record unaware, I mean, it does happen, for example, where, let's say you walk in the streets, you meet with the police, they search you, they find a box of dacha in your possession, and then they say, well, pay the fine, and then we'll let you go. So you pay the fine, and then...
You pay the fine on the spot?
Well, at the police station. They'll obviously
at the
take
police
you to the
station.
police station.
Oh,
yeah.
I just wanted you to clarify.
Not on
because,
the spot.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot that goes on in this country. So
no,
we
not
must
on the
be clear
spot.
that
At
it's
a
not
police
on the
station,
spot.
yes.
Okay.
At a police station, then you pay the fine. But then they don't explain to you that actually that fine that you are paying is an admission of guilt. Then for now, there's legislation that is being amended to cater for such instances where then, the expungement would be automatic, but it's still not yet enacted into law, those amendments to the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill. But now, what I think whoever finds themselves in such a situation can do is to actually go to the police station, ask for a copy of their docket, and then take it to a magistrate court within whose jurisdiction the police station falls, and make representations to the senior prosecutor there to say, look, I was not aware that this thing was going to lead to a criminal conviction or a criminal record as such, and if can please be relooked. And then you look, most prosecutors would look at that favorably and try and assist the people that find themselves in such a situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Rich, thanks for that call. I think it's very important advice that you've also brought up here this morning. Okay, we'll take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls, and then I'm also going to move to the issues that are coming through on the WhatsApp line.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right. Sekhatlin Mankweng, good morning.
Good morning, Kathy, and how are you?
Yes, good. Thank you, Sekhatli. Go for it.
Okay. I just want to ask, there's two cases here. The first one, I was just about to get robbed, and then I discharged my gun and I shot somebody in the palm. And then, so what happened was, before I get to the police station to cover the bullet, and then the person already went to the police station before me. And when I got there, then they arrested me. And then the guy came the following day and closed the case. And in that case, they released me. And then I've never seen the magistrate. I've never went to court. I was just in the custody. They've never given me my gun. And then I'm not sure where my gun is. Now I checked my license, firearm license. It's still active. So, but why they did not give my gun? That is the first case. The second case, me and my friend, and then we involved in an incident whereby we were just shouting to each other, exchanging words. Then his parents went to the police station the following day, and then they opened case against me, and then of which I honored to the court. Then prosecutor advised me, please, so that we cannot waste the time of the court, they can just listen to you very carefully, and then I've done that. Just comply by just admitting guilty. And then when I admitted guilty, I thought, it's just to say sorry and then I'm going home. When I checked, I've got a criminal record of common assault. So I just want to know, I've never touched that person, we never fight, but now I've got a common assault. But everything that I'm applying is positive, like PDP and everything, it's coming out clean.
Okay. All right, Sekhatli.
Sadly, I cannot respond to the first question as to why your firearm is still with the police. I think you need to follow up with the police station at which the firearm was taken to when it was confiscated from you. But of course, you may want to speak to the senior police at that particular police station and find out why the firearm was not returned to you. On the second one, shouting at each other and all that, well, without knowing the full facts and without knowing why you admitted guilt, it tells me you were charged with assault perhaps, Because if you're saying to me that the criminal record says you were convicted of common assault, then it means they may have charged you with common assault, and then you admitted guilt, and then you were convicted as such. What I want to then find out is when was this conviction, and what your sentence was, so that we can then take it from there.
If you're still there, it's over 15 years now, and then I've never been involved into any incident of that nature or any kind of crime or whatever. So, and that is to answer you in terms of like when.
All right.
And then, yeah.
So, but what was your sentence?
No, I've never been sentenced. They just said just go home and then you are cautioned and discharged. And don't do any crime within 5 years, and then it's over 15 years. But when I check with the criminal record center, then I've got common assault.
Yeah, that was a caution and discharge. So basically, you were cautioned and discharged. Yes. I think maybe you may need to get in touch with us so that we can then look into your case and then see how best we can assist.
Can I please offline give you my ID number and everything?
Sekhatli, don't worry. We'll take down the details. We'll take down the details of A. Okay. All right. Sorry. Yeah, we've lost Sekhatli there. One of the few times where Sekhatli calls in and he's not shouting at me. Eh? Refreshing, Sekhatli, not to hear you shout at me. All right. Let's take this WhatsApp voice note on the system, reflections on the system and how flawed it is.
Good morning, Kathy. Listen, I'm starting to get even more worried now. They will take your ID number, they punch it, and then they will tell you you've got a criminal record, you served 3 years. But with the same ID number, they can't punch the ID number and tell you where have you served that 3 years, where were you convicted, what was your crime. So it tells you they don't have a system, or their system is dead in actual fact. I don't understand this. Please let the gentleman please explain this. I just can't understand this.
Okay. Please, very briefly, Mr. Ralikwa, we've got news coming up.
Okay. Madala, I think we need to take that offline because I need more on what you are saying for us to be able to respond. So we'll take your details and then we can contact you once I'm back in the office.
All right. So for all of our listeners who sent your messages and voice notes on WhatsApp, please, the reason I was giving preference to the callers is because we didn't want to lose their issues. But all of the voice notes and contact details that you've shared with us, we're going to share those with the department so that they're able to contact each of you and respond to the issues that you have raised, because a lot of you have asked questions about personal circumstances that you've faced. So we will be sharing all of that with the department.